There you go.
Evening, everyone. Welcome to Inside Brownsbarn, a regular chat we're going to do with people in the industry. This evening, we've got Harry Eustace joining us, who will become a trainer for Brownsbarn Thoroughbreds this year. Our Massa 2-year-old will join him. Looking forward to him. Harry started training in 2021, probably had your best season last year. Where did it all begin for you? When did you realize you wanted to become a racehorse trainer?
Well, I was very lucky. I grew up with it. Dad trained for 30 odd years in Newmarket. And I think it's either something that becomes a passion and you think it's going to be your future, or you look to get out of it. And both my brother and I, luckily we loved it, and, rode ponies and racehorses and helped them out. And I suppose after school, I did go to university, and I got about halfway through the course, and so I got sort of the best bits out of it, and then quickly realised that it was pretty much a waste of time because I knew what I wanted to do. So,
what course were you doing?
I was doing chemistry, which Dad thought was a great idea because he thought he thought we'd get an angle, whereas I thought it was a terrible idea. So it helped with the decision. That's for sure.
Good stuff there. Very good.
Yeah. So when I left, that's basically when I realised, I wanted to be a trainer, and from there it's like an apprenticeship, really, isn't it? And you've just got to go out there and get as much experience as you can before deciding, whenever you're ready to start training. So that's what I did.
And Harry, just you're based in Newmarket, of course, and you've grown up in Newmarket. I know you're moving to a new yard. Newmarket is the HQ of horse racing, say, in the UK. What thing sets it apart as a training centre?
Well, I suppose it's the size of its facilities and the options that it brings with it. You've two sides of the town, and both have huge merits for both. That the racecourse side in particular, I think, is great for 2-year-olds. More recently, sort of Bury side seems to be sort of fashionable, but like anything, I'm sure that'll change. And I think because of that, the numbers are here. That means that the facilities are always sort of second to none, and therefore I think it'll always hold its size. And while it's the biggest sort of training centre, it'll always be the main sort of place for racing, I think.
Do you think it helps as well that's so close to the likes of London too, for owners, etc.? A lot of people from there. It's not that far of a trip.
Yeah, I think that helps, although unfortunately it's not helping Epsom at the moment. But with the train's very easy to Cambridge, and so it's very accessible from London, regardless. And I'm pretty sure we've picked up owners because we train in Newmarket, in amongst other, there are a range of people, but because we were in Newmarket, that was a big plus for some people. And you hear it's pretty Marmite Newmarket for some people, but it's home for me, which makes it easier to be positive about, I suppose.
Yeah, but even for myself, like going over to visit, it's just an impressive place. I know some people can say this and that about it, but it's like even on top of Warren Hill there, it's a sight to behold.
So Dad actually, he didn't grow up in the industry, but a couple of his mates, their dads trained, so he went to visit, and he actually grew up in Kent, and the first time he visited Newmarket, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He couldn't understand somewhere like that existed, and it can be very easy for us to forget that it's not that normal actually to have horses sort of wandering through the streets of a busy town, and that actually, we are working somewhere sort of that's a bit unique and a bit special.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Harry, obviously in the last 2 years you've gone from strength to strength. Heading into this year, do you have any specific targets or aims yourself for the year, or what do you have in mind?
Yeah, everyone asks this. I mean, the main thing is for us, we've just had more winners and more prize money each year, and really they're the two indicators for us that we target. like anyone, we'll be targeting, group races and festival races. But I think that sounds pretty obvious, but it's really just to keep the trend that we're doing at the moment and keep growing. That's really the main thing.
You'll have to have another Royal Ascot winner. You've had the last 2 years.
Well, that's the obvious one. Yeah, that's the obvious one. I know yeah. I mean, that's going to be hard. And of course,
Docklands, he's an interesting horse. What sort of route do you think he'll take this year? Will he step up and trip, or will he stick to a mile? Or
yeah, so he'll be campaigned relatively lightly early in the year, because the plan with him is very much to go to Australia either for the Spring Carnival or the Sydney Autumn Carnival. We're not sure. It sort of depends how this year goes, but so he'll have a prep run into Ascot, being sort of an Aussie syndicate, or to be honest, even if it wasn't an Aussie syndicate, Ascot is a big draw for them, and so we'll really prep his initial targets around that. And I suspect he'll run. There's a sort of Queen Anne trial, I think, Trials Day.
Yeah, of course.
He loves that straight track, and it's the obvious starting place. And interestingly, that'll sort of dictate where we go. I've always thought that Wolferton is the obvious race. I'm really looking forward to going a mile and a quarter with him. Certainly the second half of last year, the way he trained and everything about him, and even when he was winning, suggested that actually he'll be better over a bit further. And if that's the case, we can still sort of dream about him being a bit better again. And so, yeah, it sort of depends what happens in this prep race, and then obviously, the second race will dictate the second half of his season. But his mileage will be relatively low with Australia in mind. Try and take him down there a fresh horse, because he's mentally very good, and last year in particular, physically, he was very sound. So, there could be quite a few options for him down there, and if it meant having 2 or 3 races down there, for the prize money on offer and that sort of stuff, we'd like to go, fresh and try and capitalize down there.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know how I've seen him actually. He was in the parade ring at Ascot. He looks a lovely looking horse physically, but obviously I think it was 16 grand as a yearling.
Yeah.
But what was he like as a yearling? Was he quite weak and backward?
No, I tell you, it's interesting. He was quite raw, understandably, because he's quite a scopy horse. But Tommy, you'll have done the same. We take a bunch about this time of year, maybe February, once or twice to Railway Land, and we take a lead horse and 8 or 10 2-year-olds that are ready to do it, and they all just come up as a bunch, and it's not really any pace as such, but it's just to get them banging off each other to teach them a bit. And the lead horse we used was an ex-race horse called Spar's Dancer, who was quite good in his day, but he was 12, and it sort of undulates Railway Land, so you can't see everything that's happening. They sort of bob over, and then they disappear again, and then they come into view.
Come up again.
And anyway, Spar's Dancer basically took off with his rider, and they were stretched out like a 3-mile chase. I was like, it was the first time, and I was like, fuck it.
Absolute disaster.
Yeah, I was like, this is a disaster. But there was one horse sat on his girth, and that was Doctor.
And that was this time.
That was this time as a 2-year-old, yeah.
They had ability always.
So he always had ability, and everyone got really excited. But he was big, and he had a few immaturity issues at 2. But we knew all along he was pretty good. Yeah, to be fair, he just was one of those that just always showed it. Yeah,
good stuff.
So it was quite fun when you look back. I mean, it's easy at the time. Usually those ones that do that, everyone gets excited about, and they're useless. So we weren't getting too excited about it.
So, like Docklands, Harry, we have a Massat 2-year-old heading to you this year. I actually bought him myself at the RB Book 2 yearling sale. A lovely, robust colt. He'll be the type of horse that I'd say you'll have no nonsense with. He'll be very straightforward to train. But yeah, look, really looking forward to having you to train him. What do you like about the Massat as a sire, or as their stock? I know you only have Docklands. So what was really appealing to you with him?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because obviously from that story, I sort of followed all the Massats after, because once you think you've got a good one by a side, you take more interest in them. And there weren't a lot running around, but he's actually, I think, done very well for the mares he's been sent. But he was a very good racehorse, son of Teofilo, great pedigree. Like anything, with the right numbers, he probably actually steps up and goes on to be commercial. But all of the ones I've watched have been very robust. They seem to run a lot, and they seem to
definitely
try.
steps up well, I think, too, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I actually haven't seen your lad, but certainly from the photos, he's got a very similar head, and I think there seems to be quite a lot of the sire in them, and I couldn't fault Dockland's attitude. Like, mentally, he's the easiest one I have to train. Like, I don't actually have to worry about him. He'll do whatever you want. He'll go on his own. He'll lead. He'll follow. And so from our point of view, it makes life much easier, because when you rock up to the races, you can, ride how it suits, rather than sort of having to ride your race first and then worry about, the rest of the race second, sort of thing.
Good.
Yeah. And obviously it's a big help when they can fit into them restricted. Obviously, starting out, I think Dockland's made his debut at 2, but didn't break his maiden at 3. When they're running in them bandies, it's just a huge help. You're not running against Dubois, Applebee's, and them sort of things. So it's definitely a huge advantage, that, isn't it?
The bandies in particular, and I think they seem harder and harder to buy, actually, the bandies, and a lot of times you're trying to get one and they sneak into a band C and D, and they're actually, there's a big, I think, difference from the C into just the Ds. And so being band D is a big plus, and whether it's at 2 or at 3, when they turn 3, they're even weaker, frankly. The band Ds, so and he was 3 Docklands when he broke his maiden, and we dropped him back in trip, but because it was a band D, I was sort of pretty happy to.
You had to force your hand, really, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it was one of those. We bumped into Charlie Hills's horse at Wolverhampton in the CD, and I just remember scratching my head. But the fact we saw Charlie at Wolverhampton told us our fate before the race.
He's beaten like 5 lengths by Paddington then or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you knew you were in good company anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the interesting thing with our guy. He's related to a 2-year-old winner, and it'll be interesting to see whether he shows earlier as a kind of later in the season 3-year-old type on pedigree. So I suppose once he gets over to you kind of make an assessment and train him on that basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, everything when they first arrive, they do a sort of 6-8 week basic sort of education course sort of thing, and then how they take it and how they stand up dictates whether they might have a bit of a break and then come back in, or if they just stay in.
I mean, I think the reports we've had from Brian, like, Brian is probably a man of very few words, and when he does elaborate on something, it's usually bad news. And whenever we've heard from this guy, it's just been, he eats, he sleeps and trains and enjoys work. He's never had a problem. So he's kind of like, whenever you want to ship him over, he's good to go, basically. So
great.
Seems pretty horizontal, which, as you say, is a good trade to have anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it just means sometimes when you want to squeeze them, you can, because nothing fusses them, and that's great.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks a million for coming on and joining us. I suppose before you go, is there a particular horse I suppose our kind of syndicate followers should follow this year, or anyone in mind that's standing out at the moment?
No pressure, Harry.
Yeah.
Who's the next Royal Ascot winner? This year's one.
Bring up the treble.
I'd say our best chance at this stage is probably a horse called Payment in Kind. He's actually he's from Tats Island as well. He ran as a maiden in the super sprint and finished 3rd, and then won his maiden but got injured when he won his maiden. He's rated sort of mid-80s, but I think he's better than that.
Or keep an eye on anyway.
Yeah, at the moment he'll aim for that 5 furlong 3-year-old handicap, but it's whether he sort of progresses through the ranks before that or not. But we'll see. Depends how long we can sit on our hands, I suppose.
Very good, very good.
Well,
thanks a million for coming on, Harry, and giving us your time. Appreciate it, and looking forward to getting the horse over to you and visiting your new yard etc., etc. So no, thanks a million.
Yeah, no, pleasure, and we look forward to having you all over.
Thanks,
Good
Harry.
stuff.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Harry.
guys. Lovely to meet you.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Cheers.
Bye bye.